Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. We are going to be talking about the Billy Meier case this evening. Billy Meier is a 80-year-old man. He lives in Switzerland, about 45 minutes east of Zurich, in a beautiful forested area in a tiny mountain village which sits nestled among pine trees. Billy has had the most interesting and unusual life that you could ever imagine. He started out at 5 years old getting telepathic messages from a 1,000-year-old extraterrestrial man named Svath, who turned into his mentor for the first 11 years of his life. And Svath and Billy would go up in Svath's strange silvery pear-shaped craft. And one of the things that Svath told Billy, he told Billy about his previous lives, that in earlier times he had been the people that today we call Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad. And in each one of these lifetimes, the spiritual consciousness, the same spiritual consciousness in Edward Albert Meyer, taught an ancient universal teaching called the teaching of the Spirit, which is a teaching that focuses on the creational natural laws, the law of love, the law of striving, and the law of harmony, or the law of balance. And these are laws that we live by. Billy spent 11 years with Svath learning many different things, learned about what was going to happen in his life, and he learned much about future prophecies. And I think I have a caller on the line here, so we'll go ahead and see if this person wants to come on the air or not, and then I'll continue. 312, you're on the air.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark, this is Dolta. How's it going?
Dolta, it's good to hear your voice. How are things in Chicago?
Things aren't too bad. They're starting to heat up here now. I think we're just leaving spring and entering the summer. It's warming up.
Are
what
you
about you down there?
Well,
we've
got
what's
beautiful.
it like down there?
We've had the most beautiful weather this weekend. It's just been fantastic, and I'm basically in a park here, so the trees are green and the skies have been blue, and it's been beautiful the past few days. So it's what's new with you? Are you still? I'm sure you're still studying the Meyer information, correct?
I am. I had maybe some downtime there because I'd been busy, and as life does, you can get tied up with other things. But I recently just ordered the not the Talmud. I have that already. What is it? The Goblet of Truth. So I just got that in the mail from Michael Horn, and I had read it online and printed some of it out before because it's available on PDF. But I recently just got the book, and first of all, the first thing you notice is it's amazing quality, and it's like 14 inches tall, really tall book.
Wow.
And once you start getting into it, as you know, it's just mind-boggling.
Is it a little easier to read than the printed out pages? I printed the whole thing out. I took it somewhere to have it copied, and it's just so many pages. They had to print on real small font, which makes it kind of hard to read.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. When I saw the big book, I think there's a smaller version and a bigger version, and I didn't even realize. But I got the 14-inch size book. I think that's what it is. So I was expecting the print to be much larger, and that kind of, I thought, oh, this will be cool, reading in larger print. So I open it up, and it's all still small print, but it just gives you an idea of, how much is actually in the book. Yeah, how much information's in there, and then you get reading, and you realize that Billy has written this book in, I think it was like 7 months. So the time period, the expected time period was supposed to be, according to the player, and they thought that, this was all part of the mission, that he would take on this work of writing down the message of the creational natural laws, as all the previous prophets had done. So they expect the time frame for that was supposed to be 3.5 years, and he done it in like 6 or 7 months. So that's just
incredible. That is incredible. So you can't get away from the small fonts, huh?
You can't get away from the small fonts. and I just recently got glasses. So I was thinking that it'll be, in big font, I'll be fine. I'll not need big glasses. But I opened it up, and sure enough, it's in small font. But that's fine. I don't care what font it is. It's just a great read,
And you have the new Talmud, which I don't. Is that really cool, or what's that like?
The new Talmud is, like, I read, I ordered on Amazon the old version, and as you probably know, the old version, they asked Billy, I guess, back in 2010 to burn that version because they had found inconsistencies and falsifications from Isa Rashid, who had translated the book from Aramaic, I think it was, to German, and then Billy had it took it on. But so the new book goes into a lot more detail. There's a lot of explanations, which is required. When I first read the Talmud, it was kind of the Talmud was kind of special for me, because although I found the Billy Meyer material and initially read the contact notes, at that period in my life, I was, I had kind of started to go back to church and this and that, so I was kind of searching, and I'd never really grew up with parents who forced any religion on me. Both of my parents had fallen away from religion themselves, so they'd kind of seen the light, so to speak, to steer themselves away from religion. But I was always spiritual, I'd say, so I was always searching, and then I had a period in my life that I thought, right, I need to go back to church. So when I came across, the contact notes, and, you start getting into this, and then you start reading about Billy's connection with Emmanuel, then it opens up a whole new, whole new box, if you will. And so, that really just opened my eyes to realize, actually, it all made sense. You know what I mean? But the old version, I was, even whenever I read the falsified version, I was excited, and I wanted to send it out to people. I thought this is what I had to do. I had to, let people know what was going on. But that was a bad move on my part, because it lacks the explanations, and people could quickly get confused. But yeah, the new version is an amazing book.
The beginning of the new Talmud has like a whole chapter or so explaining various different aspects of the story, correct?
It has I think it has more than a few chapters. Basically, dedicated to It's quite extensive. The whole introduction to, have you read the old book that was released before?
I've got the old one, yeah, but I haven't ordered the new one yet.
So the old one kind of quickly gets right into the, the meat and bones, where the new one is half. I would say maybe a quarter, if not half, the book is spent, kind of introducing you to this whole story, and it's very thorough. It breaks down all the different religions and how they developed, and how even the new religions, not the new religions, but the religions that we know, the main religions that we know of, how they're actually they're not identified properly, and I wouldn't even try to give you some examples because I haven't got the book in front of me, but it's just very thorough, and it speaks to the to the amount of work that Billy put in just to make sure that this time it's done right and that there's no misinformation put out there.
I got to get that book. It sounds like a really, really good book. You don't have it handy, do you?
I don't. Actually, you know what? If you give me just 1 minute, I may be able to pull it up. Can you stand by?
Oh, sure, no problem. No problem whatsoever.
All right, let me just grab that. Give me about 60 seconds.
So, according to Meyer information, the person that we call Jesus today was actually known as Emmanuel during the time of his life, and I did a little research on my own and learned that the letter J never existed in the ancient world, because even people like Job weren't really called Job. For example, the book of Job is the book of Iob. So, and if you look, for example, at the old paintings from the Renaissance, which show the crucifixion, a lot of times above the painting will be an acronym, INRI. And the I stands for Iesus, which is what they called him in the Latin. So there really was no letter J in the ancient world, not in the Hebrew, not in the Greek, not in the Aramaic. It wasn't until, according to some scholars, 1550, that Gian Giorgio Terracino invented the letter J, and then he was one of the people that started the substitution process, because what they started to do was substitute the letter I for the letter J, and eventually, instead of the name Emmanuel, we got the name Jesus that we have today. But Zolta, I hear that you're back.
I am. How long did I take there? Was that like 45 seconds?
Oh, that wasn't bad at all. As a matter of fact, okay. If you can open the book and read a section that you would find interesting, I think it would be great.
All right.
Particularly at the beginning, which I think.
Yeah, let me see here. I'm juggling about 3 books at the moment. I never. The only book that I've finished is The Psyche, and I'm reading at the moment The Way They Live and the Talmud. So I've been kind of juggling between the two.
I got a guy in the chat room, Dolta, that listens to your show, Nature's Way. Is that your show?
Yeah, it is. Okay. Yeah. That was just a little undertaking that I thought might help, just like yourself. Just getting the word out there.
Excellent.
Let me see here.
And you wanted to say hello to Eve. Did you want to say hello to Eve as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to say hello to Ev. Ev is a friend of mine who lives
Evelyn.
up there in ours. She's. I just wanted to say hello, Ev. That's all.
She's down in Arizona now, right?
She is.
She moved near Munns Park. Have you ever been to Munns Park yet?
Yeah, I took one trip up there. I found the Billy Meyer case in 2013, and I was just fascinated by it, and it was just totally, at that time, it was just a shock to the system, So I dove right in. Yeah.
Wow.
I dove right into the material and started reading as much as I could, and then I found out that when you get into the material, there was at one point while Billy is developing all his writings and stuff, I guess there was a threat of World War, and it was suggested from the Pleiaren, I guess, that to help the mission continue, that they would send one or two of the people that helped Billy at the time with the mission, send them out to America. And I think they sent a girl called Elsa or Elsie. To kind of they scout some land, and it was apparently in the area of Munns Park that the Pleiaren had said, and that there's a world war, things get ugly. This will be a place where the mission could continue on. I don't want to misspeak either, because things change obviously with time and so on. But that was, so I read that, and I thought, what, I have to take a run up there. I'd heard that there was a group that got together, and flew up there and met up with the whole group, and it was a great experience. Everybody was really nice, very welcoming, and I spent a couple of days traveling around, seeing the sights, and it's just a beautiful area.
Mm-hmm. Before you begin reading from the Talmud there, I want to read you something quickly in the Might of Thoughts, something I was looking at today that I think is very interesting. It says, regardless of how the human being's present situation and surroundings may form and may appear, they will always be in accord with his/her thoughts, and he, she, and thereby also his or her world stands or falls precisely with his/her thoughts, as well as with his/her ruminations, visions, fantasies, ideas, imagining, and wishes. It is the thoughts which create and sustain everything, which allow everything to remain. So I just thought we would start out there. This book is so amazing. I've read it 3 times. I'm halfway through it for the 4th time. But the problem now is I can spend a whole day on one paragraph. So I've slowed way down.
I remember reading in the contact notes that they correlated somebody's ability and endurance with labor. So a long day with hands-on kind of work to their ability to be able to endure, time spent reading or studying spiritual teaching. So this will give you an idea. But I can pick up a book and read a couple of paragraphs and be quite tired. Now, I would say I'm quite, I'll spend quite a, 8 to 12 hours a day, doing a good hard day's work, but yet I can't, spend more than maybe an hour reading, the Talmud or these other, the Psyche or the Way to Live, because there's just so much, as you say, you get wrapped up in, a paragraph or a few lines, and it tires you out because there's so much thought that goes into it.
And I also sometimes those particular areas that are really interesting, I will memorize them. And then go over them again and again and again. And then I will find that certain words will kind of jump out of the sentence, certain key words that are pivotal in helping to understand it. And then I think the memorization also helps me in understanding as well, which is weird. It kind of clarifies things. So
yeah. You know what? That's one of the reasons that I love coming back to your show. Like, I spend an hour driving to work every day, and
I do too.
I don't get bored of listening to you. You know, I'll turn on your blog talk, and I love your introductions and all of that. And it's you know, oftentimes you'll repeat the story, but I love listening to that story over and over again. You know what I mean? But each time there's always a lot. Yeah. So I hope you never stop doing your intros to the story, because you know, you always add something new, but it's always refreshing, you know, and enjoyable.
Well, thank you. That's very nice. Very nice, Dilta. I want you to read the Talmud here, but let me read this one little thing here. And this is, you know, I talk about this all the time. This is when Billy met Asket, and they went inside the Great Pyramid. Let me read just this little section for you. It says, "We walked in that manner for a long time, and I felt that we climbed down somewhere on various occasions. Then suddenly a very weak light was discernible precisely as if the first light of dawn entered. Yet I was not able to fathom the source of this twilight. Now we stood before an enormous squared stone somewhere deep in the pyramid. Right before my eyes, suddenly the gigantic ashlar simply dissolved into nothing. And already Asket pulled me over the position where just a few seconds before the giant ashlar had been completely joined with the other square stones. A steeply descending passageway, which was guarded by two oddly clothed men, opened behind the ashlar, which had now vanished. And as I threw back a glance as I looked down the passageway, I could not help but ascertain that the squared stone which had just disappeared was again precisely as visible and completely joined as just shortly before, when I saw it for the first time from the other side." So I'm like you. I never get tired of this stuff, man. I could listen to it over and over and over again. It's so well.
I just start. It is.
Go ahead.
No, I just recently started. My daughter's 6, and she's she's seen me reading the books, and she's always asking about the picture. You know, like in a lot of the books, you'll see a picture of a beam ship. So she's kind of interested, and so I thought, well, why don't I read to her the Asket story? So I kind of simplified it, you know, but you're just reading that section there from when Asket had sent in her I guess ship to pick Billy up, and they went off to the pyramid, and I told this story to my daughter, and she's laughing her head off, whenever Billy lands in the desert, by the pyramids. Billy goes into one of the tents, and he kisses, he's invisible, and he kisses the girl, and my daughter is just laughing. She can't believe that, she's like, he kissed him, and he's invisible, and he didn't even know. And I said, he's a bit of a character, and then you read on, and Asket's kind of laughing and this and that, and then the next thing, Asket says to him, "All right, let's go, Billy. We're going to head toward the pyramid here." So they get into the pyramid, and they're going down this long tunnel, and they come across this what is it, like a guard of some sort?
Mm-hmm.
He's just like protecting the tunnel, but so even for kids, it's a fascinating story. You know, it's adventurous, if you could put it like that.
Have you ever been to the Billy for Kids site?
I've listened to the video interview that Christian Frenner did, but I didn't know there was a website. Is there?
Yeah, there's a website too. But that interview you're talking about is one of the best interviews, I think, that he's ever done.
Yeah. I wish he would do more of those.
I do too.
It was definitely
I really
enjoyable.
do. You know, and I wonder if it's getting harder for him now at 80 years old to do these interviews. I don't know. Maybe he's just as spry as he always was. I don't know. But I would imagine at 80 years old you might slow down a little.
Yeah, I'd imagine, you know, if you could compare Billy to, you know, the average person, I mean, from what I've read and heard, the man worked 15 hours a day, and that was just the work that he put into, you know, strenuous labor, working around the farm and this and that, and then he would go back and spend, you know, the man didn't sleep, and when he was sleeping, he was thinking. You know what I mean? So he was working even in his sleep. So you know, it's just amazing. But I've got one little section here. It's just very random because where I had bookmarked was kind of just in the middle of part of the Emmanuel story. But there's a section here called the Prophecy, chapter 25, in the New Talmud. And if you'd like, I can read that a little bit.
Go ahead.
So this is titled The Prophecy in chapter 25. And Emmanuel walked out of the temple, and his disciples and disciplesses came up to him because they wanted to show him the temple structure. He, however, spoke to them, "Look here at all of this, for truly I say to you that not one stone here will remain upon the other without being broken, because outrage and outrightfulness, just like sorrow and pain and death and destruction, will rule in this city and in this land up to the distant time to come. The people of the God believers commit an outrage against life and the truth, and they built this city on human blood. But on this people, since time immemorial, is divided, and the people who call themselves sons and daughters of Zion are God believers, with whom I do not identify, and who want to kill me, and who therefore are misled believers of the cult religion, and to whom I bring the teaching of the truth, as I do to all human species of the earth, from which they may comprehend, learn, and know that they are not chosen." And then there's a little explanation underneath it. Yeah, it's just, I mean, I think you've told me, Mark, that you spent the time with religion.
Oh, yeah.
And when you read this, it's not confusing, and for me, in a way, the stories are familiar, but yet they're corrected, and there's, it's so simple, yet it's been so badly distorted. You know what I mean? What else can you say? It's highly recommended.
It's so profound too. What you just read was so profound. It was really impactful for me to hear that.
Yeah, and the book goes on like that. It's just endless. But even for people who haven't been, misguided or misled by religion or grew up with religion, I think they'll find the book very refreshing and insightful and historical. There's not much you can say bad about it. It's a great read.
Do you remember anything from the very beginning that defines terms like Ishwish or creation or anything like that?
I'm not the best at that, talking about that, but there is a section in there. Let me see if I can pull it up here.
Yeah, if you could read one of those, that'd be great too, if you don't mind.
Yeah, let me see if I can get some. Yeah.
I have to order that book. I still haven't ordered it. I think Michael Horn ran out.
Did he?
For a while.
I'm not surprised. He gets, I think, a shipment from Australia and Canada. So, it's a popular book. Everybody's ordering it.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see here. Jews, Judah, God believers. Brief history about Judah and the Jews. That this is kind of the break. It's not brief. It's like a couple of pages long.
You could.
I'll read this little section here. The 5 major religions, their names and designations of believers: Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism. As a rule, the believers of religion or sect are named in accordance with their god, whom they worship, or in accordance with the founder of the religion or sect, or in accordance with the people, as well as in accordance with any religion or sectarian concept, or in accordance with the invented name. This is also the case with major religions. So Christianity, as an example, the designations Christianity and Christian are derived from the Greek word Christos, which means the anointed, and in the Hebrew meaning Mashiach, I can't even say that, that is Messiah. This title was imputed as an honorary title to Jesus of Nazareth, who was truthfully named Emmanuel. In accordance with the designation Christos, the religion would fundamentally have to be called Christioism. So even there, he's correcting what we would have got wrong if we are to properly designate, the name. So it's been called Christianity, but it should be called Christioism, I guess. So it's this introduction here breaks down what the rightful name should be of each religion, based on what they have recorded, in that religion. So that's interesting in itself. There, Does that make sense? What he's? Oh yeah.
You know what I was thinking about when you were reading that was the Meyer information says this story about Emmanuel will be kind of what really gets the ball rolling in terms of changing our world. And I just find that very interesting indeed.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know that you highlighted something very interesting. You brought it to my attention there, I think about a year ago, was that there's no, is it, remind me again now, there's a certain letter in the alphabet that was reintroduced or something.
There were really, in the ancient world, as far as I can tell, and I'd love for someone to come on the show and prove me wrong, but as far as I can tell, there really was no letter J in the ancient world. Not in the Hebrew, not in the Greek, not in the Aramaic. So, and that's why in the very first King James Bible, in the 1611 version of the King James Bible, it says Our Lord and Savior, IESVS. Because they had no letter J, they couldn't have called him Jesus. They didn't call him Jesus until much later. And that was one of the things that really, really amazed me because I kind of went back to try to figure this whole thing out, because the story about Emmanuel I kind of set aside. I didn't oppose it. I didn't, I wasn't negative or positive about it. I just left it neutral and kind of investigated the rest of the material. And then I thought, well, how in the world can the name Jesus, how can we be wrong about the most important person in Western society? I'm like, how can that possibly be? And then I stumbled across a YouTube video that said there was no letter J in the ancient world. And then I went looking for Old English. Well, in the Old English, there was no letter J. And then I looked around a little more, and I realized there wasn't a J in the Hebrew or the Greek or any of the languages of the Bible. So that was really profound to me. And then I studied, if you study paintings, for example, at the beginning of many of the Renaissance paintings is the inscription INRI, which is Iesus Nazarenus Rex Iodorium, which Iesus is what they called him in the Latin. And it's an amazing story, which kind of blew me away, actually.
Yeah, and that speaks to the fact that we've been given a historical account of a man that allegedly was God, right? According to Christianity, and they're preaching that this man, his name was Jesus, but yet, there's if you look into this in any way, you'll find that sure enough there wasn't even a J, in the alphabet going back 2,000 years ago. So you've got that wrong if you're misleading people, about the name Jesus. What else are you not telling us? You know what I mean? So
exactly.
Yeah, I thought that was funny whenever I heard about that, and but you couldn't if I sat with my father-in-law on a Sunday and tried to tell him that story, he would kick me out of the house.
Would he really? Oh my goodness.
No, he probably wouldn't, but he wouldn't be happy,
He'd be terribly offended.
Yeah,
probably.
But I just don't go there no more. I've learned that I'm sure many people, whenever they come across this material, Mark, especially people who've spent the time with religion, we have this maybe built into this that we just or maybe it's just a human thing. We want to tell people, and we want to sort of it's I don't know if you call it preaching or what, but I know for me, when I found out about the Billy Meyer material, I wanted to tell everybody I could. I was like, hey, you have to see this. Come over here, But you find out pretty quick that it's a mistake. For one, people think you're cuckoo because you're talking about UFOs, and and then nobody likes to be told, and that is when you get into this material, you start to realize that this is one of the key aspects to the material, is that you should not be preaching to anybody. Can you talk about if somebody asks an interest what you're reading, or can you talk about it? Of course you can, but should you be telling them that this is even if it is the truth? We should never be telling anybody how to think, and what is real or what's not real. We can only kind of say what we think, and that's all. That's all. There's no value in trying to tell somebody what's right or what the truth is and what isn't. I don't think, anyway.
I agree, and it's what I've also come to realize is a lot of people aren't ready for this kind of truth yet. I mean, like you said, it blew you away. It blew me away. Can you imagine what it would do to the people that weren't ready? So
yeah,
you have to give them time. This is a lot.
Yeah.
This is very weighty, impactful material. And like, as I've studied it over the years, like now I study it all the time, but before I had to study a little bit at a time and then set it aside, just to try to, for my mind to process it. Because there's a lot in our subconscious and a lot in our unconscious that, struggle with this and try to put it all together. And it takes time because literally what you're doing is rewiring someone's brain. That's what this material does.
Yeah. I joined on, Patrick McKnight. He does. Mm-hmm. He holds monthly meetings on his platform, creationaltruth.org. So it'd been a while, but I joined on the discussion this week, and they were talking about our consciousness, and I know you like to get into that whole subject of our consciousness, and I always find it's a fascinating area. But it was talking about so when our spirit is originally created, there's an overall consciousness block, I think it's described as, which is created from the spirit, I believe, and then in each reincarnation, then there's a consciousness block. So what kind of came to mind for me was, if this is just my own example. I wouldn't want to say this is Billy's example, but this was my own. This is how I visualized it. So the spirit creates, let's say, the overall consciousness block, and that's the tree, right? And then off of the tree, you have all these branches and leaves, and every lifetime it adds a consciousness block, and that's a new leaf, and that is always accessible. So every time you die, you pass away, that everything that you've learned in this life, the highest essence of everything that you've learned, is there's a period of time in the afterlife that is everything's worked out, and the highest essence of that is stored in the consciousness block, and that in your next life. So you're, and you'll be able to probably speak about this better than I am, because I'm still learning about this. But everything, so the personality, everything's dissolved, but the highest essence of everything that you learned in that life is stored in the consciousness block, which is stored in the overall consciousness block. And then in your next incarnation, you receive impulses from that consciousness block. Does that sound right, Mark?
That sounds very right. And I'll tell you, you're doing an excellent job in your studies. And if you don't mind, I'm going to use that tree analogy. That was I like that tree analogy.
It kind of works for me. But, and I think you've got a computer background, so those things probably click better for you, because everything is like, I don't know, you've got, what is it, like, you got processors and all these different parts to, the system. I'm sure you could relate that somehow to that whole consciousness thing. But the tree just kind of analogy works for me,
That's a great analogy. That's really a great analogy. I love that.
Oh,
that's a great way to kind of visualize it. That's the key, I think, for understanding a lot of things, is finding a way to visualize it.
Yeah, I think so. I remember Billy, when somebody had asked a question about reincarnation, he explained it using a tree analogy, and that also helped me. And I think, I'm using kind of comparisons there, but it was in a different context. He was saying that just like a tree, if you're to look for evidence in nature for reincarnation, look at the tree. You have the spring, where the trees blossom, the leaves and flowers and everything come out, and then you have the fall, and that could be compared to, spring is our rebirth, and then the fall is our death. But the tree is always there. The tree doesn't go away. So the tree maybe perhaps could be compared to our spirit. Our spirit is, is everlasting, and our rebirth in the material life is like the leaf every spring coming out, and then the fall, the leaves fall. But so it's the coming and going. And you know what kind of just struck me as well. We always, see death as the end, and we're encouraged in the material to contemplate this, and I've began to do that sometimes. Spend time thinking about death, but it's really not. To us, it looks like there's an ending, but there's obviously not an ending. It's just, it's a transformation of energy, let's say, because energy, you would have learned at school that energy, you can't get rid of energy. It moves from one state to another, and that's all really that's happening. So in actual fact, we're just flowing from one state to another. It's just a flow of energy from one state to another. It's not a death. You know what I mean? But it's hard to grasp, isn't it?
Isn't that so comforting?
Mm-hmm.
I find that so comforting. The fact that we have a spiritual consciousness that never dies. It just reincarnates with a different personality and a different material consciousness. And most human spirits on the earth are at least 4 million years old. Now think about all the reincarnations you've had over the past 4 million years. That's a lot.
Yeah, I would have thought I would be smarter, but that isn't the case. I'm still
yeah.
I'm still
I wish I was smarter.
4 million years. That's a lot of reincarnation.
No kidding. But we do many more. I mean, we're 40 to 60 million years in the first 5 stages of our evolution. And Billy says, and look it up in the psyche, that the spirit forms on the earth are between something like 4 and 12 million years. The folks who came here from other worlds and died on the earth, their spirit forms may be 8 to 12 million years old. But we've still got quite a long time for reincarnating into a completely physical body. And what's interesting, the Pleiaren are in their last stage. They're at level 5. They're in what's called, they're not that far away. Their next stage would be stage 6, where we're half spiritual and half physical.
Yeah.
And we spend a fair amount of time in that stage as well.
Yeah, I thought I heard somebody saying, so you had said that in the material life it's 40 to 60 million years of reincarnating, and then in the spiritual realm, pure energy, I think it is, or pure spirit.
Are you talking 7th stage now?
Yeah, that's possible, because I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I think somebody said that it was like 60 billion years then. So you go from 60 million now to 60 billion in the in the spiritual realm. Does that sound right?
That is exactly what's written in the contact notes, but there are some errors in translation in the contact notes. In one of Michael Udibrook's new movies, and I think he mentions it's actually 2.9 billion years in that spiritual plane. And there's
okay.
There, but what you quoted is directly what the contact reports say. There are some translational errors in the contact notes, And that's something to keep in mind. I wish I had more time. Maybe when I retire, I can get involved in the translation stuff.
Yeah, and I would take everything. If anybody's listening, I would take everything I say tonight with a grain of salt. You know, that's my little disclaimer, because I'm just a student, and I'm still learning this stuff, and I'm sure there's everybody, you know, more. You're all probably far more familiar with this than me, but you know, that's what I love about it. I just love learning from it. You can learn at your own pace. You know, you haven't got this God looking down at you saying, "Hey," you know, giving you a whip, you know. But
have you?
It's just great stuff.
You've listened to Michael Uderbrook's movie, I can tell, or have you?
I have, yeah. I've listened to a couple of his videos, and he gets into. I think he gets into the reincarnation and all of that. That's, I think, something that interests him. I was looking to get him on to Nature's Way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna reach out to him again, you know, in the near future, because he's just full of knowledge, you know, and he's just seeing, you know, the work that he puts in is an inspiration.
And what time does your show usually come on? Is it a YouTube type of thing, or tell us more?
Yeah, well, I'm not really good at I'm not good at the live thing, and usually, you know, so the way I do it is I just kind of pre-record things. I do interviews on Skype or over the phone with, you know, whoever, and then I use there's a website, Upwork it's called, and I just outsource the editing. And then I just throw them up on the YouTube. So, you know, there's that way. Usually it works out good, because when you're trying to get somebody on, you know, scheduling is, as you know, is always tough. So I try to just accommodate. You know, yeah, it is hard. Like Vivian Leigh is one of my most favorite people to listen to. I could listen to her for hours, you know, and.
Really?
Yeah, she's, you know, and she's another person just full of wisdom. Like, you know, whenever I, you know, started looking into this material, you know, I spent some time on the Figu Australia website, and you read their articles and their analysis of Billy's writings, and they're always very insightful. I always take little nuggets away from her, reading her stuff, and you know, Michael Uderbrook as well. So they're two people that, you know, when I can get them on, it's always a pleasure, you know.
Now, people can find your YouTube videos if they type in Nature's Way in YouTube?
That's right, yeah. Yeah, you can go to YouTube, and the channel is called Nature's Way. Recently, I've started to reach out to... I just had, you know, I'm always trying to think of different ways to help get the information out there, and I thought that I had an idea. I don't know if it's you know, how well it's going to work, but reaching out to different people in the community that are interested in the material and who would like to narrate their own little excerpts from Billy's material, their favorite excerpts, and you know, they can narrate it, and I'm going to publish them on YouTube. And I think, you know, that way it's kind of giving everybody an opportunity to, you know, give their little piece to the world, I guess, you know, on behalf of the mission. But I think that, you know, that's so what I've been doing is narrating. I've had hired a couple of people to just to narrate, you know, maybe an article, a couple of pages of Billy's, and then I'll just post it up there. So a few different things, a few different ideas.
I was supposed to read something for you too, wasn't I?
I wouldn't hold it against you. It's all right. That's all right. There's too much going on, Mark, and I know you're one of these guys that works non-stop, so don't worry about it.
Well, we'll have to do that, man. That sounds like a great idea. And I encourage
Absolutely.
you to read more of the Talmud on your show.
Yeah,
you got to do
that. I will. That's something I've been thinking about, just doing maybe a little intro and discussion on certain articles of Billy's or sections of the Talmud or the Psyche. It just takes some time and preparation. I'm not as, I'm sure you could just turn on your computer and start talking. I can't do that. I have to, you know what I mean? You're a natural. I have to spend, and I'm not saying that you do that. I know that you put a lot of effort into preparing for your podcasts. But
it's funny. It's funny you should say that because I have spent hours and hours and hours preparing, but some days I do just turn it on and go.
You're a natural. Yeah. And if that comes, if you can do that, more power to you, because the easier it is for you to speak about this information, the better. It's exactly what you do. You repeat, and that's the way people learn. Repetition.
I agree, and like you said, I mean, there's a beauty in the way Billy puts things together, and you can't get it. Even in the first 5 readings, you're not going to get it until you hear it again and again. And like the story about Ask It, my goodness, I don't know how many times I've talked about that. And each time I read this, I get a little more out of it. It's just amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And I'm just like I was telling you, we're just started reading this story again to my daughter, and so I'm just getting into that whole story. It's probably been 2 years since I read that Contact, but whenever I occasionally I'm driving to work and I'll hear you talking about it, I just have a wee smile on my face because it sounds familiar, and it's really enjoyable, and you do get more out of it every time you read it.
Well, Dalton, man, I appreciate you coming on the show, and we went the whole show, man. We went the whole hour here.
Geez. I can't believe I just talked for an hour. I don't know where it comes from.
There you go, man. And please do this again. Call in anytime. It's a real pleasure. I enjoy touching base with you, comparing notes.
Yeah, well, you keep up the good work, Mark. You're doing a tremendous service. You know what I mean? And I'm your biggest fan.
Thank you, Dalton, and we'll talk again soon, folks. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Ohio Exopolitics, and listen to Nature's Way. Go out on YouTube and listen to Nature's Way. We'll talk to you all later. Have a good evening.